Thank you. So yes, I'm talking about how to communicate the climate emergency. And look, we do want people not only to know that the house is on fire, but to act like the house is on fire, to move into emergency mode. I'm going to be talking about some of the ways of doing that. But before I start, I want to acknowledge that we're up against the biggest disinformation campaign in the whole of human history. It's not a mystery why it's so hard to get the message out. Our federal politicians not only are getting funding from the fossil fuel industry, not only getting lobbying from the fossil fuel industry, but are under great threat from the fossil fuel industry of losing their seats if they speak out, which is just one of those reasons why councils are so important. A simple thing you can do is always say climate emergency and not climate change, right? Even if it's warming or global heating, anything except climate change. When you say climate change, you're feeding into the denier meme. The climate is always changing. And there literally is research on Democrat voters in the US. It makes a 9% difference from around 50% to around 60% about whether Democrat voters think that climate is one of the top issues for the government. 9% difference just from changing the language. Same sample, same time. But of course, just telling people, even if we didn't have the fossil fuel industry lying to people, is hard. We're wired, our human brains are wired to pay attention to the tiger, much more than something that's sort of happening. Because we look out the window, it doesn't really look like anything's happening right now, not unless the Maribyrnong is actually flooding or the fires are actually burning. Now, fortunately, there is another quirk of the human brain we can take advantage of, and that is that a story or a picture, especially about a particular person, has almost as much effect on our brain as actually seeing the thing happen. So we mostly haven't had our girlfriends die in a crash, but this ad brings it into our awareness, almost as though it's happened. So stories are important. How can you do it at the council level? Well, you're probably going to bring in programs for heat emergencies, right? And you could just frame it positively. Wow, we're doing this good thing. But if you can add to it a story of somebody who's died in a heat emergency or nearly died, it changes everything. 1,000 people dying, that's a statistic. One person dying, suffering and dying, that's a tragedy. Similarly, if houses flood, one of the things that makes people anxious is the risk of not being able to insure their houses. Have a whole council forum on it. We need to bring these future risks into the present, and plus councils do need to be planning. What will happen to those houses that flood once, then twice, then 5 times? But it's partly about the story. It's about telling it so people get the future impacts in their heads now. As David said, what we're risking is food and water shortages, conflict and mass migration on a scale that has never been seen in the whole of human history. And it's playing out already, but far away, in places we don't even really hardly hear about. How do you bring that story into your council newsletter? It's quite hard, but the impact on young people who are too afraid to have kids because of their fear of societal collapse, that's a simple way of doing it, or having the kids actually talk about it. Another important thing to remember is that we are actually descended from herd animals. Our natural tendency is to look and see, are our leaders running or are they grazing? Unfortunately, at the moment, they're grazing, right? And they probably will keep on grazing because they're actually afraid. Councils have to find a way to get the herd running. A simple thing like a banner out the front is a start, but putting it on the website, yes. Another thing that's very important is emotion. A set of facts just doesn't have the same effect on our brains and on our urge to act as emotion that we catch from other people. That's why Greta works so well. And that's why the things that David was outlining about the scientists getting more emotional, really important too. The facts just don't urge us to act. unless the person who's speaking about them shows some emotion about it. So coming to the gloom and doom debate, sigh. I wrote this booklet like years and years ago, and still it goes on. I was distressed to hear that it was going on back in 2006 already. What the research shows, this is from a meta-analysis of 98 studies, is that the best way to move people to action is a personally relevant threat. If it's paired with an action that has any chance whatsoever of actually being efficacious. And no, it doesn't backfire. This is another meta-analysis, 127 studies. It doesn't backfire. That's why we see public health campaigns that nearly always use that formula, threat plus the action to take. And it would be ridiculous to have an emergency message for a fire or a flood where you didn't use exactly that formula. The fire is coming, get out now. So how did we come to believe something different? It's partly some studies that just get repeated over and over, and I'm so running out of time. Fear won't do it is one. Terrible methodology, tiny numbers, and the findings actually were misreported. It's gone all over the world. It's still getting referred to, including by the IPCC from 2011 to 2016, recommending it. Similarly with this terrible study, no, it doesn't backfire. This is, again, small numbers, university students doing it for credit as part of their course. Terrible design, and it doesn't even show what people think that it shows. So I just want to devote my last minute and a bit to the 3 Rs. This is David's most important point. It's too late now for emissions reductions alone to save us. Most people don't know this, even including federal politicians. I have been talking to federal politicians about this. A lot of people and a lot of politicians even think that if we get to zero by 2050, somehow everything's going to be fine. Well, no, it's not going to be fine. So we've got to talk about emissions reductions. We've got to talk about degrowth. My grandmother mended socks. Oh, radical. I know, I never did. But anyway, but it's the sort of thing we have to start talking about. Either the society will collapse because we've overshot, or we'll start to make some very big changes fast. Some of the more hopeful bits are about drawdown, like in First Nations times when they were custodians of the land before colonisation, a lot of our rivers were chains of ponds. A very short time after colonisation, they started to turn into channels where the water rushed out to sea, taking the soil. We can rehydrate the land by slowing down the water, revegetate the land, and there's every chance that that will have massive cooling effects on top of the drawdown effects. There's a great big project going on in the Gascoyne River right now in Western Australia, where they're rehabilitating the whole watershed. And there's a huge project, which I was hoping I could tell you about, just about to start in Indonesia. A huge project of the whole of the watershed of a river. So these are great, big, important projects. They can make a difference, like a lot of it's still not proven yet. The research is needing to be done. Massive funds are needed. When the council is doing a small chain of ponds project near the creek, it's a chance to talk about pre-colonial times. It's a chance to talk about the fact that these changes could be absolutely huge. Local cooling, there's even a chance that it can calm the weather by improving the pressure gradients if you revegetate. You're probably not going to be doing marine cloud brightening yourselves over the Arctic. The good news is that they're doing research about using it over the barrier reef. It's actually going quite well in the sense they can get the droplets small and they go up into the clouds. You can tell some of those stories, get visiting speakers, and you can tell the story via practical actions at council level. Roofs, pavements, cooling. So as well as being Darebin Climate Action, I'm Extinction Rebellion, and this is how I try and do the thing of telling the truth but acting as though the truth is real. That's me up on the petrol tanker. So have a think yourself about how you can make this real in the council or in everyday life. And if you want to read some more of the psychology, that's the booklet I wrote ages ago that's still unfortunately relevant.
Thank you so much, Jane.